Your support of the Candid Frame over the past 12 years has been invaluable to us. You have not only helped us produce over 400 episodes, but your donations directly helped us to create the Candid Frame app and making it available for free. We are now proud to announce the release of a new way for you to listen to TCF. We have released a new skill that is compatible with Amazon Alexa-enabled devices. Using voice commands, you can listen to the latest episodes, jump forward and back, and if you stop listening partway through an episode, it will remember where you left off. And like the Candid Frame app, it's free for users in the US and Canada. In the coming months, the skill will be available in other countries, and I'll let you know when those become available. You can help and continue to support the work that we do here by contributing as little as $2 a month to our Patreon campaign. You not only help us to meet our cost of production, but provide us the means to improve the quality of the show and do so much more. Contribute today by visiting patreon.com/The Candid Frame. This is Ibarionex, and this is The Candid Frame. Since I graduated college, I've been blessed. I say this because every job I've had in my professional career has been related to photography. So along with working at Nikon, serving as an editor at Outdoor Photographer and Digital Photo Pro magazine, as well as my years as a freelancer and podcaster, I've had the chance to meet some great people in the photo industry. And over time, these people have gained a wealth of knowledge that's invaluable, not only with respect to current technology and trends, but for understanding how photography has and continues to change over time. Kevin Raber is one of those people for me. As well as running the great website Luminous Landscape, he has worked in the industry for decades as a photographer, a studio runner, as well as the creator of a successful studio management software. But it's the rich perspective and contagious enthusiasm that makes him such a treasure in today's photo industry. And I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to sit down with him and chat and talk about photography then and now. Been following the Luminous Landscape for quite a while now. I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful resource.
Well, we're trying to make it better. We've, like yourself, I mean, is this really a money-making opportunity? We're never going to get rich doing what we're doing.
Oh, God knows, yeah.
Luckily, I've made a good career in photography that allows me to do what I'm doing. So, at my ripe age is 64 now, and I hope to get at least 10 more years out of this, at least. But I guess in my career, I've been very fortunate, photography-wise and income-wise and career-wise, to have done many things in the industry and be where I am. So, this site is a passion. Michael Reichman, who was the founder of the site, was one of my best friends. And when I knew he was sick and, things were changing with my career where I was, it was time to take a look. And I said over wine one night, what you think about, what's going to happen to Luminous Landscape? And he says, well, I don't know. I said, well, I'd be interested. So, we talked about it. And next thing you know, I kind of joined partnership with him. And, we worked together for 2.5 years, which was a lot longer than he expected. He thought it would be 6 months before he died, and he managed to get 2.5 years. And he kept beating the cancer. And then I'm telling you, we were in Hawaii in February together, vacationing in Malachi. And, by May, he was gone. The thing just boom. It came and it got him and it took him. Sad to see, but we carry on the tradition now. Luckily we both shared the same passion, and if we can help other photographers enjoy the passion and do things, and mission accomplished. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the
projects coming up. I'll tell you all about those.
Well, that's one of the things.
New YouTube channel, new YouTube show coming on Monday.
Oh, do you? Oh, good.
On the Rocks. 3 men talking photography, drinking whiskey. What could go wrong with that?
God. That sounds like an awesome idea. That's great. Oh, I look forward to seeing those. Those should be a lot of fun. But I have to say that one of the reasons I love the work that you and Michael did. When I saw the videos with you two guys together, it was always really fun because you could see that you guys really loved each other, and there was a wonderful friendship, and you guys would just hang out, and it didn't come off as something that was just done to be in front of the camera.
Yep.
And that's something that I've always really liked about the content that you guys have produced, and is that here are, you know, people who have been in this industry for a very long time, and you guys maintain the same enthusiasm that I imagine you had as kids when you first started making photographs. Yeah. And it's so nice to see, because I've been in the industry not as long as you, but I've been around for probably 30 years now, and you see all kinds, right?
Yep.
And it's always nice to be able to, when you sit down with someone who still has the love for what they do. They may earn their living from it, but they still love it.
Right? Well, you know, there was two things I wanted to be in life: a firefighter and a photographer. And, you know, I've been both. Like I said, I count my blessings every day, especially to have done what I've done and, you know, been and done all the things that I've done in this industry. And know all the people I know. It's just, it's a fun industry, although it's changed photography as a whole. And I'm just setting things up for our discussion, I hope, with what we're talking about here. But, you know, photography as a whole has changed. You know, we... in the day, photography was all about getting to the print.
Right.
And now it's not so much getting to the print. You know, there's a lot of influencers out there, as I call them, which are fairly good photographers. But I went to a Sony Can-Do event last year, which is where they bring all their influencers and, you know, all their people they give cameras to. And, you know, it was funny. I mean, and no offense against the new generation, but it seemed you need a fedora, black shirts, black pants, and fancy shoes. and you know, I mean, it was like there wasn't a lot of individuality. It was all about, and I don't know. And I'm trying to say, God, I probably was that same way when I was, you know, young in photography too. But it seems that part of the element has gone out of photography. I used to look at it as creating art. Now it's creating likes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, how many people can I get to like it, or how many people can, I can get as followers. So, so there's some creative stuff going on, and the group was interesting, but boy, did I sit at tables, have dinner with them, and learn photography has changed. These people have no idea what it used to be. They don't even make prints. They don't go to websites. They get their information off of YouTube and Instagram, and that's their life. And it's silly questions, you know. Talk to them about, like, I'd throw a trick question in there, like, who was the vice president, or, weird little questions just to see how much of the world they knew, and they didn't know. It wasn't so much, the only thing that was their own little universe, their own little group of friends, and, taking pictures and being recognized and, hanging out with those same people. It wasn't a very broad scope. But, there are some really good guys out there doing some really aggressive work too. So it's, don't get me wrong, but it's those guys that I really admire, because photography today as a career is so much harder that when you see, this new generation coming up and actually doing really cool work, you got to admire it. But I just look at how fast and how much has changed in the last 20 years, and specifically probably more in the last 5 years.
Yeah, because I was looking at the span of your career, and I sort of felt like I mirrored a lot of that, because for me, my entire life has been a career of photography, but not because of any grand scheme, right?
Oh,
it just one thing would lead to another and lead to another and lead to another. And other than a stint at Del Taco while I was in high school, all my jobs involved photography in one form or another. And, I see that, you picked up a camera when you were 12, you went to art school, and then that segued into, a career working at a lab, and then you're working in a studio, and then you're working for Phase One. And it's just, and I wonder about that whole sort of playing out when you look at it in retrospect. What do you make about the fact that your path has always been photo related, except for that stint as a firefighter?
It's exactly what I wanted it to do. And as you go through the career, I had a tendency not to sit around and wait for the phone to ring. I would stick my foot indoors. I would take my portfolio out. And sometimes I would get myself in projects that I had no clue of. For example, back in probably the late 70s, 78, so forth, there was no internet back then. There was everything, you wanted to buy something, you got mail order catalogs. Everything we get online now. You get Eddie Bauer, you get Sears catalog, everything was, you stacks of catalogs, and, you fill out an order form, put it in the mail, and 2 weeks later, it shows up. I mean, who we couldn't live that way. But I remember when this guy, I was at a Rotary meeting, this guy was there and he goes, I see you're a photographer. You have a great lecture. I guess they must have lectured there or something. And he goes, do you do catalog work? Oh, yeah, sure. He says, well, I have this mail order catalog called Taylor Gifts. We do about, 3 million catalogs twice a year. I said, oh, yeah, that's cool. He says, well, I'm not happy with the photographer I got. Can I send you over like 6 products and you shoot them? And if I like them, maybe we can talk. Oh, yeah. The story goes, I was a young guy. Let's see, 76. I would probably be like 21, 22, somewhere in that neighborhood age-wise. And, he liked the images I did. I basically did them on a Calumet 4x5 view camera because they, was what we shot 4x5. And they had to be shot to size. So, I had to draw like a little grease pencil thing on the back of the ground glass and, shot transparency. Then I had to send them out. And then the transparencies would get stripped into the acetate carriers, and then, hot type was put on top of those in the printer spreads. And so the next thing you know, he gave me the frickin' job. It was worth a lot of money. I had no idea what to do. I had to learn everything. I fucked up a lot. You think of my mom, I was kind of working out of my home at that point, and the whole tractor trailer full of products to shoot shows up in her driveway.
Oh, my God.
And she was happy that I was doing something. I mean, I turned the living room and the dining room into, the studio. I had nice lights. I spent money on Broncolor lights. I mean, I always invested in good equipment. So I had the gear to do it. But holy shit, I was running in and out to the tractor trailer, unpacking these boxes, setting them up on these backgrounds. So it was all plain colored background paper. Photographing them. The lab courier was coming 2 or 3 times a day, bringing stuff back and taking stuff away to the lab. And, meanwhile, I was trying to do everything. And then, at night I would, get the transparencies back, cut them with an acetate knife, cut the acetate, pin register everything. I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned. And, it was all because I had the balls, not to back away from it. And as a result, we got good at that. And we ended up with, half a dozen big catalog contracts and 20 some odd employees, a few bays worth of, setting setups where we could shoot this stuff. And, we were making tons of money.
And I have heard so many countless stories of people who did not let the fact they didn't know how to do it keep them from doing it, because they were just like, I'm just going to figure it out. And it's amazing. I mean, because I think too many people make the excuse that because they don't know how to do it, that they don't make the effort at all to even try. And I've heard countless stories of people who have not allowed themselves to be limited by that, and they just go, I'm just going to jump in and try and figure it out. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, the worst that can happen is you lose money on it, but you get a good experience out of it. I think that's the best way we always learn. I mean, you've heard the phrase, getting thrown into deep end and you have to learn how to swim. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've done a lot of jumping into deep end in my life and, managed to tread water sometimes and actually made it to the other side of the pool many other times, but that's how you get ahead.
Yeah. So when did the firefighting fit in? Because I'm trying to figure out exactly when.
Kind of volunteer and part-time stuff. It was a way to simply get my rocks off, Uh-huh. I don't know what it was. I guess I as a photographer, I had photographed a couple fires at one point. I went to the firehouse and they liked my photography and they asked if I wanted to be a firehouse photographer. And so I kind of did. And the next thing I know, I joined up and became a firefighter. That allowed me to see some terrible things and some amazing things. I saved a few people. I birthed a couple of babies.
Oh, my God.
And I got my rocks off squirting water and chopping holes in people's houses.
So you're dealing with a lot of residential fires and commercial fires?
Well, residential and commercial. When my second year as a firefighter, we had a nursing home fire where we had 14 people die, and it changed a lot of nursing home laws. So you grow up pretty quickly when you're trying to rescue 100 people out of a flaming nursing home. So, we had industry, residential, factories, retail. I mean, as a firefighter, you learn everything. We had a helicopter plane collision above a playground. That wasn't too pleasant. And so you sort of see a few things and been there. And, so I've been around. Let's just put it that way. It's a lot of that stuff I put behind me. I quit in 2002. So, I lived in Long Island when 9/11 happened, and that's where the Phase 1 offices were. The volunteer fire department I belonged to there, we got called into the city that evening to do search. And, that was one of those occasions where, you just can't imagine the immensity of something. And the only thing I just remember, and I wrote about this on the site, there's a ranatorial on the site about remembering 9/11. That was kind of one of those moments. And eventually, a year after that, I had one son left in high school. And I decided to move off of Long Island and move to Indiana, only because I was familiar with Indiana from a previous part of my career. Mm-hmm. And I found the best school system and got him into that school system and said, I'll get him through high school and then, go search somewhere else. But I ended up in Indianapolis. I love it here. It's a cute little city. It's got some really cool up-and-coming art stuff. My gallery and studios in a really badass building with antique cars and about 100 and some odd other artists. And there's no traffic jams and there's no New York, and my money goes a hell of a lot farther. So. Yeah. But after 2002, I kind of just gave that stuff up. It's a young person's job, and I had done it for a whole bunch of years. So, but during that time, photography was always the focus. Made my living in photography, and maybe let's just go back a little, and I'll give you a brief history so that maybe you can point way into some other discussions. I guess I graduated high school in 72 and went to Philadelphia College of Art and did a photo film major there, which was kind of fun. That's funny. When I was searching for places, I went to RIT and looked at RIT, and because they had cinder block walls, I didn't want to go there. The art mentality hit me time, of me, said, this is too institutional. I can't do that. And then, but the art school thing where Philadelphia College of Art, it was ragged studios and holes in the wall, and, it was kind of that artsy-fartsy kind of thing. So I elected to go to Philadelphia College of Art, and I had some great teachers. They were art photographers. Some were really good. Some, they were probably teaching because they couldn't do anything else. But the ones that were good and influenced me for quite a long time. One of my professors was a woman. Her name was Barbara Blondeau, and she just did some incredible photography. But she was diagnosed with cancer and died within a year of being one of the professors. But she put a big influence on me as far as photography goes. And then Ray Metzger was another instructor.
Oh, really? Wow.
Ben Rose, and so there was a good influence to make me see a lot of things differently. I can't say that it affected the way my work ended up going, but they were good instructors, and I learned how to see and do some really, really cool photography. And photography back then was pretty fun. We were shooting film, and we had to focus a camera, for God's sakes. And you needed to make a phone call, you had to spend a quarter in a payphone. So it wasn't like we see today. But it was a great time to be a photographer, and it was a real community in the sense that rather than see people on screens and devices, you would get together and see each other. So in Philly, and there was places called like the Photography Place was one of the places, and it was a gallery. But photographers could gather there and meet and share things and do some things. And my biggest joy back then was spending nights in the darkroom. I had big Marantz speakers and a big old amplifier tuner thing, which had duct tape all over it, so none of the light would come into the darkroom. And you just sit in front of the enlarger and play music and develop pictures, and God, that was heaven. Now we do the same thing, but it's on a computer screen with Bose speakers or headphones on, and you use the same techniques, dodging and burning, and other things like that. We couldn't do layers, and we couldn't do a lot of the things that we've got today in Photoshop and so forth. But God, it was a great time. And then as my studio grew, we added more people, went through the catalogs. We did a lot of portraits. We had a wedding side of things we did. And I was fortunate enough to be right in the middle of a corporate area. So I had Chilton Publishing, TV Guide, Wyeth Laboratory, Smith, Kline and Beckman, Alcoa, Alco Standard, a whole slew of really good customers. Sears, I did all the Sears paint stuff at one time, which, back then they had Betsy Ross House paint. They kind of were colonial. Yeah. So, we would photograph the rooms and do some cool stuff. I didn't know how to do interiors, but I learned, and it's one of those sort of things. So, it was a great time, and I was doing very well. And it turns out in '85, when the Mac came out, I saw what the Macintosh was offering. So I started a small software company with the intent of writing studio management software. One of the things that, when my studio got to the size it did, I had to learn how to manage everything. And I was doing everything on 5x8 cards with little tabs on them, so that if I opened up a 5x8 card drawer, I could look down a row of tabs, and if this row was red, blue, or yellow, I could pull the cards and know what certain things were, and set up by dates and type of photography and so forth. And I said there had to be a better way, and then once this computer kind of came into play, I started with a Commodore computer, and you might remember Commodore.
Commodore 64.
And actually turned out to be a client of mine. They were only 2 miles away from my studio, so all the VIC 64 and Commodore 20 and all these, we did all the photography for them, and it was kind of a pretty cool job, and it did well for us at that time. So I learned how to do some database stuff on the Commodore, but once the Mac showed up, I knew this was the future. So we started programming on the Macintosh, and we released a program called Phoenix, and I started a company called Studio Information Systems, and it was basically a management software program for studios. And the next thing I know, because there was anything like that, we were selling a ton of them. And the program itself was called Phoenix because it allowed the studio to, kind of come from nowhere and become something. And it was really successful. But one day I did a whole bunch of corporate portraits of a venture capital firm. And the guy who owned the firm, he came in to pick up his portraits, and he said, "Would you ever consider selling your studio?" Well, I don't know. I mean, I kind of figured I'd be opening this door for the rest of my life. He said, "Well, I've got somebody who's interested in purchasing it." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, I've looked into this." So we talked and, talked for a while, and eventually it was too good to turn down. And it, to me, after being in it for almost 20 years, it was probably 18 years. It was about 1980, around 1980, I suppose. No, wait, 1989, excuse me. I had decided, well, it was a good deal, so I sold the studio. After I completed that sale, I'm at the closing table, and he goes, "Now let's talk about software. You got this software thing. I have somebody that's interested in it." I go, "Really?" I mean, this guy's turning out to be like a windfall for me. And just because I did his executive portrait. He had a company that was interested in buying the management package and then turning it into a vertical market package for hairdressers and dentists and pet stores and things like that, because, it was like one of the only things there was. So I ended up selling, that package also. And it was like, all right, so now I'm unemployed, got a bunch of money, what do I do? So I visited the lab. There was a lab called Burrell Color in Crown Point, Indiana, and I was doing a couple $100,000 a year in processing with them. So we were a fairly large account. And I went to visit the guy, and his name was Don Burrell. Super, super nice guy, smart like a fox in the photo industry, and we sat down, and I kind of told him, I said, I sold my studio, but the guy who's buying it's going to stick with you. I'm going to be with him for several months, getting the transition and helping him, learn the operation and so forth. But I want to let you know that, I'm going to be moving on, doing something. I don't know what it is yet. So we started talking about the industry and what was happening. There was hints of digital, really tiny hints that something was changing. Then he started telling me the problem with his business. And he had 16 sales guys, roughly, that would, cover 1 or 2 states each. He was complaining in the sense that, he was seeing an attrition of customers. So he would lose customers and gain new customers, and as a result, not growing. There were so many color labs that other color labs would come in and, say, well, we'll give you 10% off whatever you spent last year. So, there was a lot of that kind of game playing. So what I told him, and it comes back to that not knowing what you're talking about, but thinking you do kind of thing, right. And I said, well, you know what your problem is? And it was really, I said, you're not seeing the whole picture. I said, you're not growing your customers. I said, you've got to learn how to grow your customers. And now part of that, it came from the fact that my studio management software was all about marketing, meaning if you photographed a family portrait, you take a record of when the birthdays of the kids are, as well as the anniversaries of the couple and all their pertinent data. And then, like I said, I used to use a card file to, pull the cards and, know who's what. But the computer said, okay, I want to send a birthday card to everybody that was born this month. And the computer could spit the labels out, and we would put labels on postcards and we'd mail them. And we would do the same thing for wedding anniversaries, but we would mail it to the husband saying, your anniversary is coming up. Why did you remember your anniversary? And, maybe a nice picture of the kids and you for your wife would be good. So what we were trying to do and what we ended up doing was once we had a client, we learned how to market to that client more often. And we did the same thing with the commercial accounts. So, the commercial accounts were the same way, but we handled them a little bit differently. We would send out our commercial flyers on a regular basis. We would tease them with creative things. We would offer a promotion, buy 2 or 3 days worth of photography, get 1 day at half fee kind of thing. So we were always staying in front of people's pictures. I would do creative shots, like I'd take an ice cube and figure out a way to make it light on fire, and then I would put a poster together, red hot ideas that are really cool, and send that out, and creative weird things like that. I told Don Burrell at Burrell Color, I said, what you got to do is learn how to teach your customers how to do better and sell more. So rather than try to go out and find new customers, take the customers you have and grow them. Show them how to answer the phone better. Show them how to ask the right questions when somebody calls up and how much is an 8x10. It's not so much about how much 8x10 is, how big is the wall space where you want to display your picture.
Yeah.
And, what does your husband do? What do you do? What are your kids interested in? So that, like, if the kids, were doing a family portrait, not only would you do the family, but you do the couple, you would do each of the kids individually, you do the kids together, the kids with dad, the kids with mom, separate everything, break them apart, do as many pictures as you can, get more sellable pictures. So if I could increase the photographer sales by 50%, think what it would do to the color lab, where you didn't have to do this. So what so many of these mom and pop studios needed was a consultant that would help them be a partner in their business and learn how to grow their businesses by asking the right questions, learning how to sell better, and learning how to take better images and better poses. And so that was even before a lot of workshops were being done, and a lot of this actually turned into workshops and things. So, that was kind of fun time, and I ended up working for them for a year as kind of a trial, and then I ended up coming on and become business development manager. One day I fired all the sales guys. In the other room, we rehired most of them and hired a bunch of new aggressive guys, and had a great system. And Burrell went on to buying 9 other color labs and 2 supply houses, and we had a corporate jet. We would go out and pick up customers and bring them into the lab to give them tours, and it was a real golden age. And in the middle of all that, Don Burrell came to me and another gentleman named Mike Williams and said, here's a check. I'm going to build a building. You two now are in charge of making it digital. I want ours to be one of the very first digital color labs in the country. And, it was like we knew digital was coming, and this is 85 roughly right now.
Okay, yeah.
Talk about? No, 95, excuse me. I'm sorry if I have date problems. I'm getting date challenged. So, he gave us a big check, and we learned how to start trying to figure out how to automate the color lab business. And the goal was, there were still no cameras out there. The earliest camera at that point still was in a suitcase with a big hard drive with 1 megabyte hard drive and a big cord. And it was made by Kodak, and it was kind of cool. But it was a big suitcase, and you could tell where it was going. But our goal was to have photographers shoot film, send the film in, scan the film on a high-end scanner, deliver them a CD with the images, and then they could use a computer program with these images, show them to their customers, place their order. We would rescan the film to high res and apply the cropping, and then rewrite a new negative with retouching done in the middle. And it was a very sophisticated system for the time. And we got a chance to work with Kodak and the company that made the LightJet printer and the Lambda printer, Durst. And we did experimentation on CRT imaging, which was used as CRT tube, which was really narrow, and it had a red, green, and blue, line, and kind of like a linear kind of printer. LED printing and laser printing, and some inkjet printing on indigo printers. So we were really cutting edge at the time, and a lot of failures and a lot of learning and so forth. And during that time, what was amazing was And it comes back to the old Kodak story. Kodak was on top of the game. They were inventing stuff.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, they had all this stuff. They started inventing digital cameras, inkjet printing. You know, they were doing some fabulous stuff on video. You know, they really had this giant facility where they just tested all this stuff. And we would get a chance to work with these people. But, you know, these people were just as frustrated because as we were adapting this, Kodak wasn't keeping up with it. They would have this technology, but they wouldn't go anywhere with it because they were afraid to jeopardize their business. Mm-hmm. You know, they were in the consumable business. They couldn't see how digital would ever benefit them, but they knew it was there. They just couldn't figure out how to, you know, turn the turn, and look where they ended up.
Yeah.
You know, and this is something, you know, which right now we're probably witnessing quite a lot with Nikon and Canon. In the mirrorless war. Mm-hmm. And if you watch our new video series, it's on the YouTube channel. Luminous Landscape has a YouTube channel. It's called On the Rocks. Our first episode, we talk a lot about that in the sense that we talk about the industry in photography as it is today. And we're seeing kind of like Canon and Nikon play that same Kodak game. What's happened in the last year is that specifically if you ask B&H and most of the independent camera stores, people come in asking for mirrorless. You know, they want something smaller, they want something quicker. And when you look at the fact that a company like Sony and even Fuji, they're and Olympus too, they're innovating at such a rate. You know, when you got a camera company like Sony that last year put out 6 new cameras, I think the year before they put out 9, and you look at where they are today, you know, like the A7 III for under $1,900, it gets super fast autofocus, 24 megapixel, you know, great dynamic range, you know, good 10 frames per second, I believe it is. They've got these super lenses. I mean, you know, they've got some issues. You know, I don't like their menu system. I did a whole video just to teach people how to use their menu system. Boy, if they're not teaching us something about what mirrorless is all about. And, you know, when you see all the stories on the internet about people moving from one camera platform like Canon or Nikon to Sony, you know, the Sony guys must be meeting, or not the Canon and Nikon guys must be having meetings going, oh, my God.
Yeah.
You know, and now they're talking, well, we got mirrorless coming. But the big question is, you know, for them is, can they catch up? You know, what happens with their legacy glass? And this is, you know, interesting story. You know, Canon's and Nikon have these big cameras, and they've got legacy cameras. Nikon's got a beautiful camera, the 850 right now. Well, you know, that's probably saved their bacon last year when you think about it, because other than that, what did they really have? But it's probably the last great DSLR. We'll probably see. But, you know, the question is, can they put their legacy glass on a mirrorless system, which is going to be pretty hard because of the lens to flange distance and the way, you know, that it works. And why would you want a big bulky camera? You know, essentially you're taking the mirror, the mechanism, the mirror box out of it. So it'd be curious to see where Canon and Nikon end up. And, you know, they're going to have to go nuclear in that sense of, you know, if they do release something, be so good to get their customers to switch over. And meanwhile, you know, Sony's just going to keep marching forward. You know, we've got some great predictions on where, you know, I think the future lies. I wouldn't be surprised. You know, we're going to see a 100 megapixel medium format camera both at with Hasselblad and Fuji this year. You know, if you take that chip and kind of cut out a 35 millimeter frame, you're talking 60 megapixels or roughly, you know, thereabouts. Why can't they put that into a Sony camera?
Yeah. Well, you know, you've been privy to a lot of conversations with a lot of these manufacturers, especially recently. And I'm wondering, you know, because a big part of it is the fact that with the evolution and the invention of the cell phone, that the market for the consumer camera has completely been almost eliminated to a great degree. And that was basically the bread and butter of a lot of these manufacturers, where now, you know, you don't see compact digital cameras available at all. So how are these manufacturers, from your perspective, seeing the market for photography? Because, you know, what they used to rely on in terms of a good source of income is gone. And though there is an explosion in interest in digital photography, I don't know whether or not it's actually translating into people who are transitioning from their cell phones into wanting to start using a camera. So what's your sense of how they're sort of gauging the people who would be interested in the cameras?
I think a company like Sony, for example, and Fuji, they both have recognized where their business is, and so they're not making compact cameras anymore because nobody's buying them. Okay, you've got a cell phone, that has the capability of taking really nice photographs. It's always with you, with some amazing apps to even do a lot more with your images. So you might as well not even try to fight that. So most of these companies like Sony and Fuji have just said, maybe we'll make a token camera in that area. Like, for example, Sony makes a really nice compact camera, the RX105, which is really small and has great features, but it's more for, an auxiliary camera to those that are using the other side. I think what these manufacturers are looking at is saying, the compact camera business, we got to write off, and those people that want those kind of cameras, for their family snapshots and so forth, are going to go to the mobile devices. But there is a group of people that, because they're getting more involved with photography as a result of photographing with their phones, end up looking at higher end type cameras, whether it be entry level DSLRs or even a step up, and deciding that they want a camera with some more telephoto capability, and they want something a little smaller, and something that can give them more professional results. And that specifically goes to a lot of the families that let's just say, the soccer families, whether it be the mom or the dad, you kind of want to go to that soccer game. You can't photograph your kid playing soccer on an iPhone. Mm-hmm. So you want to have that zoom lens and that high speed capability. And the fact that you can, you don't have to buy film. So you put a $2,000 investment out, $2,500 investment out. Now you got a camera that can do video. You got a camera with a telephoto lens that, can catch your son playing soccer at, 10 frames a second. You can throw it into iPhoto or just use the JPEGs or, learn how to process RAW and, take your work even further. And a lot of these companies are saying that's what they see this evolution coming. The more interest in photography with mobile devices is going to generate more interest in photography in the mid to high range devices. And, they're banking on it. And I think if you look at Sony and Fuji, you'll see that that's, kind of coming out to be the truth. Yeah. There are more people taking pictures with these kind of cameras than there ever were before. And, that's because, there's a generally higher interest in photography than there ever has been before. There's not that many people making a living in it, right, because it's so hard when everybody can take good pictures, but more people are taking more pictures. So these companies have decided we're going to make cameras that are going to make us profit, and we're going to sell, at a decent price with high quality features built in, and hope that's where our future lies, as an auxiliary camera to the phone.
Well, with the point in compact cameras, there was a huge market for that, and now that that's gone, yes, there are people who are going to transition from their phones to a quote-unquote serious digital camera, be it mirrorless or DSLR, but it's still a much smaller percentage than what they're accustomed to. And is that going to result in some of the manufacturers that we've known a long time really going bye-bye?
I think some of them are going bye-bye. Look, Samsung came into this, the last photo keynote a few years ago with a camera that had the most amazing specs, and it didn't last 6 months. Yeah. They didn't even give it a chance to get off the ground. Look at Pentax. Pentax used to be out there. And while they have the KH1 and everything, you don't see a lot of marketing on it. They had a Pentax 645, which was a great camera. They were ahead of the curve. And, now Fuji and Hasselblad have jumped in there and, they just stopped developing that camera. So I think there's some camera companies, specifically those that have come from a bigger family like, Ryoke and all these companies that own some of these camera companies, and just go, this is not a market we want to compete. I think, your players in the end are going to be Sony. Is going to play. They're not going away. I mean, if anything, they're on. They want to be number one. I think, possibility they will. Olympus, it makes marvelous cameras. The problem is, they work with a small sensor. But in that niche market, they'll probably be there. Panasonic uses the same sensor, a Micro Four Thirds sensor, they realized that there was a change coming, and they opted to try to design their cameras to go towards the video guy and the growing interest in people with video. And, when you think about that, the video side of things has grown tremendously, specifically because most of these cameras can do pretty good video. The question really comes, where in the hell are Nikon and Canon going to position themselves? So the smaller companies are going to go away. Yes, there's probably, or as I think I've heard before, they'll be absorbed. Like Minolta went away,
right? But
they're really Sony today. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Sony ended up taking Minolta, when they weren't able to figure out the game, and they used a lot of what came with Minolta at the time and evolved their cameras into what we see as the Sony cameras today. We may see that with other cameras. There was a lot of talk at one time that, Nikon was having major issues and, maybe Fuji was going to buy them or somebody else. I think we're going to see some of that over the period of time. There aren't going to be that many choices, that there used to be out there in the cameras. You've got 3-4 players, and that's what you're going to be playing with. And that's fine. That's going to give us, as the purchasers, at least some good choices. But you really can't go wrong today. There's not a camera. I'll tell you the camera that, I hate to do this, you can't go wrong with finding a camera that takes a good picture, except with this one. Oh. And this is the Light 16. I don't know. I have a review coming out on this pretty soon, and I really held up a lot of high hope for this camera, but it's the first camera that I'm really pounding, just because it's just not what it should be. I mean, why spend $1,900 on a camera like that when there's so many other choices out there these days?
Yeah, I mean, when I just see all the cameras, even the cameras that are just still 3 or 4 years old now, it's just like they still are remarkable picture-taking devices. It's hard to make a mistake in terms of purchasing a camera because they deliver on so many counts. I think it's much easier today to define something that gives you everything you need in order to make consistently high quality photographs. It's remarkable.
Yeah. Well, even though I run Lula and I've been involved in this industry between, the Burrell Labs and Phase One, and, Phase One was an amazing part of my career when I did some amazing stuff at that company. Ultimate respect for what they've done and how they've survived and what they're still doing. But, all along, and that's kind of why I like where I am right now, is I've always had that photography side of things. And why I was able to do well in those 2 corporation side of things was because, I still took pictures. To me, going out and taking pictures is the ultimate. I can't say that enough. To me, it's fun. It's therapy. Working the print, and the image on the computer, and then finally making a print. And I really, truly believe that a lot of these influencers and a lot of the people that aren't making prints and, rely on Instagram and social media, they're going to die and nobody's going to see their work. In the end, the only way you're going to be known when you go is because there's something you leave behind. And it's not a file, it's a print, a signed print that you can leave behind. And, until you make those prints and begin to really appreciate them, that's the true end of photography is the print. That's always what we ended up, whether we're shooting for magazines that ended up in a magazine print, or, we're shooting a portrait that could go on a mantle in a living room. It all had to do with the print. I mean, back in the day, and now it's great that we have multimedia and social media and all the different things that we can, share things in a digital form. But still, there's nothing like a print. Yeah. And this is the other thing that's about the best thing you can imagine in photography today. All right, you take a high-end camera, whether it be Phase One or a Sony or Nikon, Canon, they all do great digital capture with dynamic range to the likes that we've never seen before. I mean, in the film days, we were lucky to get 4 or 5 stops dynamic range, and even that was pushing it because you had no way to, go in there and open up shadows and recover highlights. You sacrificed something and decided what it was you wanted to keep, and you worked within that range. Now we have digital printers that allow you to print pure black all the way to pure white, 0 to 255, going on that 0 to 255 scale. You can actually, it's not even subjective, it's quantitative, and now we can make a print with so much detail in it, and the fine detail, meaning, using a raw processor and a good camera, we can massage the file until we get just the right shadow detail. We recovered on the highlights. We've got the colors to the kind of range that we want. And then you make a print. And what I like to do is make a print that I consider immersive. So I like to make big prints. And, I put them up in the studio gallery. And then I judge something. If you were my photographer friend and you could come over and have a glass of wine, every now and then I invite my friends, come over and have a glass of wine. I put these pictures up on the wall, and I want to see what happens. Because, they're big ones, and they look at them, but they find something in it, and they start stepping closer and closer and closer and closer. They see something, and they start immersing themselves in the image. And then they're starting to find the little details. The flower in a window of a house, in the big scene, the leaf on a rock, on a landscape, that has a drop of water on it, and that's what I would call an immersive image. You look at the big shot, and then you are sucked into the details of the image. And that is what digital gives us today, that to me is probably one of the most exciting things about taking photographs, is because now you can make such brilliant and great prints on such a variety of papers. You're not worrying about chemistry and fading and all the different things that you wanted to. And you can make that file and you can print it 100 times and make it exactly the same each time.
Yeah, and you guys have been an amazing resource when it comes to printing. I've watched a lot of your videos there, and I've learned an incredible amount as a result of the work that you guys have done on your site. But let's talk about the philosophy behind the Luminous Landscape, because I think that's. Okay. I really would like to hear more from the horse's mouth on what that is for you guys.
In the beginning, when Michael created the site, Michael Reichman, the founder of Luminous Landscape, he didn't know he was creating a monster. It was just a friend of his, Chris Sanderson, who's still with me and does some of my video work, almost all of it, suggested that, well, you should start a website. And, because websites were just beginning. This was like, 99 or something, I guess. And Michael was writing a lot of articles. So put some of these articles you're writing on the web. So that's what kind of Michael did, because Michael was one of these guys that was in the corporate environment, loved photography, did some photography as a career in a camera store and as a photographer, but ended up going into the communication industry, succeeding very well there. Somebody bought his company, and now, he had this, he could kind of retire, and he just now had this passion for photography and technology, and digital was coming of age. So it was like, wow, he was just sucked right into this thing. And of course, all of us that were trying to learn were looking for resources, and he's one of the only resources. So the Luminous Landscape grew out of the passion that Michael had. And, he continued sharing that passion, right up to the end. And of course, that's what we want to try to do, is, share the passion of having fun taking pictures. But, considering all things photography. Now, a lot of things have changed. At one point, it was like learning all these things. Now, pretty much everybody knows how to do them. Meaning, what's an f-stop, and, what's a dynamic range mean, what's all these technical terms mean. And what I've been doing lately is, if you watch the site, I'm going back and called Rediscover, and I've been taking some of Michael's older articles and kind of cleaning them up and republishing them, because they're timeless. They're in Michael's words, but, they bring back the basics. So if you're looking for the basics, we can come back to that. But in the end, it's still all about, learning the most you can about photography, whether it's new techniques such as, learning how to make better prints, which was part of the Shooting with the Masters series we did. Yeah. Learning the history of Leica, which is a very big series we did when we visited Leica, and did the history of Leica and visited with all the manufacturers. Now you get an appreciation of where photography started, because they were one of the ones that defined 35 millimeter frame format photography. To contributors that write about how to get the most out of an image. Some articles are about how you visit a location and turn out photography, and it's our audience. There's also a lot of them are contributors, and it's all about sharing. We call it the Photographer's Knowledge Network in the end, but it's all about that passion of going out and take pictures. And along the way, and 2004, Michael did his first workshop, which was in Iceland. And after that, workshops started to be plentiful. But at that point, Iceland didn't even have tourists.
Oh my
and
God.
now it's overrun
with cameras.
And workshops are all that very important part. And something I started with phase one called POTUS, which was the phase one digital artist series, which we did very big workshops on. Mm-hmm. And that was a great opportunity to bring photographers out in the field and shoot with them. And, there's something about, number one, doing it by yourself has its benefits. I mean, there's something cool about being out in nature taking pictures. There's something cool just like there is with golf when you're with your buddies taking pictures.
Yeah.
So those of us that don't golf, we got a camera bag instead of a golf bag and tripod, and we go sit on a hill with some of our friends, wait for the light to turn right. Not only tell some stories, but we capture images together. And talk about, I'm going to shoot it with a longer lens, or no, I think you should look wider. Are you overexposing or underexposing a stop or two? How are you shooting this shot? So, you're standing out there in the field and you're learning as you go. So workshops are and still are a very big part of Luminous Landscape. Yeah. Why we like our workshops compared to some others, and everybody does them differently, ours have always been inclusive, meaning you pay one fee and you get everything. So in essence, we normally pick you up at the airport and, you ride with us, we eat dinner together, we shoot pictures together. So we're always together talking photography rather than do, carpooling workshops where you might spend a lot less money to go to a workshop, but you're in a caravan of 5 or 6 cars driving down the street, stopping at a certain spot and everybody trying to get out. We keep you all together so that we can always talk photography. And now my workshops are much smaller. The workshop series I do in the Palouse, which is one of the most amazing places in the U.S. to visit, I only do with 4 people. So it's me and 4 other photographers in a big suburban 4-wheel drive van or a car, like an SUV. And, they pay a much higher price to go to it, but we learn from each other. And most of these guys aren't schluck photographers. They're not beginners, mind you. So they know photography. But there's something about knowing it together and learning together and, having the chance to talk about experiences and different places we've been. So it's, it's what it's all about. So that's the kind of way we like to do things and, keep everybody together and do these workshops. So it's, once again, it's about getting out there and I like to say having fun, because that's to me what it's all about.
Well, one of the things I really like about the site is because I think one of the things about, modern photo education, for lack of a better word, is that so much of what I see, especially in terms of YouTube, is all about emulation. It's like, hey, learn how this photographer does this. And people are in the pursuit of finding out how that photographer does it so they can do it themselves. But what I like about what you guys do is that you really are a proponent of people learning the skills to be able to express their own individual voice, that you don't get locked into just, trying to make, copies of photographers. It's like, look, here's all this information on shooting, on especially printing, and try this, try that. You really encourage people to go out and play and experiment and take some risks. And that's why I think, sites like yours are really invaluable. I mean, there's, you can learn anything everywhere. There's no shortage of places you can use as a resource, but I think it's really important to really consider where you're learning from and what you're learning, especially if you want to be challenged to the point that you grow as a photographer.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that sometimes one of the most discouraging things for me is that I like to go to iconic places, but find the non-iconic or new iconic image there. Lofoten, Norway is a prime example of, there's this one bridge, you've probably seen a million pictures of these red huts along this, the ocean with a mountain and the sun and everything behind it. And you go to this place, and we did a workshop there last year, Art Wolf and I, and we said it'd be the last time we do a workshop there because we show up, can't deny it's beautiful, but every time we were showing up somewhere, there was 5 other workshops showing up. And there's 60 people lined up on the bridge taking the same picture. And, well, it was great to be able to take that picture. There's no real individuality with it. I mean, you could call up Lofoten and you'll find hundreds of the same picture. Everybody's planting their tripods in the same holes. So I have two philosophies now that I work with there is turn around, first off, because sometimes, you find there's something new and different, looking in a different direction. And the other thing is find the picture in the picture. For example, I go to Iceland a lot. I've been going there for years, shooting the same thing over and over again. Got great shots, but then I put a long lens on one day and just said, holy cow, I don't need the whole waterfall. I just need a part of it, and I can create a whole new art. Like where the water falls on the rocks and the mist is misting away and the sun's hitting it and making a little rainbow. It's the picture in the picture. So, you begin to start finding things that are still allow you to think differently and photograph differently, even if you're going to some of the more, iconic spots. Shoot that iconic picture, but then challenge yourself with finding something that's different.
Yeah. Are you still doing those monthly outings with your wife?
With my wife?
Yeah.
Yeah, as much as we can. We get in the car on a Sunday, and these are always fun because it's like, where do we go? I don't know. So we just kind of like pick a direction. And the funny thing is, it's so much fun to find out what you have close by.
Yeah.
And it's also fun because she's a brilliant photographer, but sees something so totally different in the way I do. We get out of the car and I might go photograph like this bridge and it's a beautiful covered bridge. And I start looking for her and I can't find her. Like, where are you? She gets swept away or something. And no, but she finds her way under the bridge and she is looking straight up at the way the beams are or something. And, she's got a brilliant vision, a brilliant ability to see. And see, that's also one of the fun things about shooting with other people is, seeing how they sometimes see and go, God, it's right in front of me. Why didn't I see it?
Oh, yeah.
And she's really, she defies what I normally photograph. I mean, everything's got to be perfectly level and she goes completely bonkers and has her own style, but she's much more freestyle thinker than I am. She can write poetry and she can paint. I've tried painting and I can throw paint on a canvas, but it doesn't look like what she can do on it. So, but the point that I think is fun, and I would encourage, the listeners, everybody, is even if your wife is not a photographer, get in a car with her or your kids or something and just drive somewhere with no real full intention of what you're going to find. We're driving along and we found this like weird factory building. And what it was a place where they would take cannon shells apart. And there were all these giant shell casings and bomb casings all over the place, and they decommissioned them. It was really, tons of geometric stuff, and it was very industrial, rusty, weird-looking things. But we just discovered this. I didn't know there was a place like this in this Hobunk town in the middle of nowhere. And, we would sometimes find these individual little art antique stores, and, there's always something to photograph in those. So it's amazing what you can find if you drive. An old abandoned gas station, or, some guy that decorates his lawn with all these crazy ornaments, and, we'd be photographing, and he would come out when we get into conversation, and next thing you know, he's in the picture, with all his craziness, and you have your own adventure, and you make your adventure, and, you meet people, and you find out that, we live in a crazy world with somewhat crazy people, but you know what? A lot of them are pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you gotta get out of the house, gotta get it out from in front of that computer. Life is meant to be lived outside of, this confined space we call home. I mean,
you just got to do it.
Yeah.
For example, we have a very active forum on our site, as you're probably well aware, where a lot of people can post questions and things. And we have a lot of our forum members who are really tech-oriented. Mm-hmm. And that's great. I mean, that's something that you find in photography. These guys that like to read MTF charts and, get into the scientific aspect of lenses and whether they're soft at the edge or contrast. And, these lenses won't perform in this. You know what? I mean, I know how to read all those charts and do all those things, but, to me, if I throw that 100 to 400 millimeter lens on and I go out and I shoot a picture and it works and it focuses and I get my picture, I don't need the chart. I need the camera. Show me if I can walk away with a good feeling about the photography I've done with that device. I don't need to look at the chart. If I look at it on the computer and the image is tack sharp and I can see the caterpillar on the leaf, guess the MTF chart might actually be good. But that's not going to tell me I can see the caterpillar in the tree. I got to get out there and find that shot and find those images. And so, it's great to be, reading all this technical stuff and what all it means and understanding it. But in reality, a lot of us aren't ever going to see any of that in the kind of photographs that we take. And I've been exposed to that, obviously selling and being part of phase one with the high-end digital equipment. There is something about a phase one file that if you look at it, you wouldn't even need a chart. You would just know that it's really special.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've probably seen a phase one file.
Oh, my God, yeah. I have friends at the Huntington Library here in San Marino, near Pasadena, and they use that extensively there. And every time I look at one of those files pulled up on that computer screen, it's just like, oh my God,
I know.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, it's just that that really starts truly defining what the photography is capable of. Not that we all need that kind of thing, because a lot of the other cameras, a 24 megapixel camera can deliver for 90% of the world exactly what they need. But it is nice, and it kind of reminds me of when I was shooting with 35 millimeter, and then a friend brought over some transparencies that he shot on a Hasselblad, and I knew that I needed that Hasselblad camera because there was something about looking at a 35 millimeter Kodachrome slide and a 2.25 square inch Kodachrome slide from a Hasselblad camera, and it was just like so size does mean something in that sense, but it's not that you really need it. But it's I don't care whether it's with the iPhone or whatever. It's just about taking really great, fun pictures and challenging yourself each time you end up taking those pictures. I did something last year which shocked a lot of people, and I'm going to have an article on it sometime in the next month or two. I'm kind of working at it now. I did a project, and I believe a lot of photographers, and we share this on our site quite a bit. There's quite a few articles about doing a project. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of what we do, we have an endowment, as you probably know, where we give grants out. And, obviously that's focused on projects. So, and my friend Brooks from the Lens Work, he's all about making, projects. If you look at the Lens Work magazine, which is an amazing magazine of photography, it's about projects. So I decided, because I had picked up my iPhone and I discovered an app called a Hipstamatic app. And I found a lens and a film combination. That's kind of how they pair them up. That were really cool. So I said, wow, it's kind of what it would basically do is take an image, and based upon the tilt of the camera and all the different relative changes, they had some algorithm, and they would take the image and then reduplicate it and do a double exposure based upon a certain thing. So it was all kind of haphazard. So if I shot a picture, I would take it and take a number of pictures, tilting the camera a whole bunch of different ways, and find one I like. But I shot it in square, and I shot it in black and white, and it was called Being Square, Seeing Double. And for like 3 years, I went around, and while I did most of my shots, I would always get the camera out and do a Hipstamatic shot. I was in Lisbon last week, and we entered this cathedral, and it had this brilliant ceiling. So I saw, the Hipstamatic. I almost forgot that I had the iPhone in my pocket because I'm shooting with the new Fuji XH1 doing a test review of it. And so I got that out and boom, 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 boom. And within 5 minutes, I had it up on Instagram because it turned out so cool. So I did a whole thing, and my whole studio was, I made a whole ton of these prints, and it was really amazing. It was well accepted. People really liked them. And, the photographer will criticize the photographer for shooting with an iPhone because they say it's not a camera. Many of them do. Mm-hmm. Although the person looking at the image when they would come to our open house, which we do have in 2 weeks, which we had like thousands of people come through in the open house, and they would just love them. And not one person asked, what did you take it with? They don't care. People buying your art don't care whether you used XYZ paint or, XYZ brush. They care about what the image looks like on the wall. And what difference does it make? Is an iPhone really not a camera? Come on. It's probably one of the best cameras you can find anywhere, because it's almost impossible not to take a good picture with it.
No one ever asked Hemingway, what kind of typewriter do you use?
Exactly.
What make of ribbon do you use when you write your books?
So, the point is, it's You can even have fun with the iPhone. So even while I'm out shooting with, a big tripod and, trying to do all the perfect things that I do, I always end up getting that iPhone out, turning the Hipstamatic app on and shooting 1 or 2 shots. And maybe there's something there when I get back. And, they actually print really nice. We printed 1722 prints of them, and, they made for a really cool show.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And so that was my Being Square, Seeing Double project. And,
awesome.
So I challenge everybody to find something that's special to you. Silly things, whether it's just photographing doorknobs, in the city, or mailboxes, or, window boxes. You can start with so many different kind of projects, and they can be, running consecutive at the same time. But, work on a project. And then when you're really ambitious, photograph a friend that, has a challenging disease. Barbara Blondeau, who I said earlier in the show, was one of my instructors in school when she learned she had cancer. Her big project was documenting, up to when she died. The treatments, the changes, the effects, and, all the different things that were part of it, the loneliness, the isolation, the vulnerability, and the fact that, there's an end coming.
Yeah.
And, how not only affects you, but affects, the friends. And, so you can go for a very big project like that along the way, too. So this is the beauty of photography is, one of the things that photography allows us to do that painters can't do and sculptors can't do, is we can tell a continual story. Our photography can be part of a bigger picture in that sense. You can photograph or paint something really beautiful, and you can sculpt something really nice. But the sequence of photographs and the ability to be able to, carry it through a period of time is something really special that photography allows us to do.
Yeah.
It just makes me happy. God,
Oh, yeah, I can hear it in your voice, man. That's great. That's infectious. Well, my last question that I ask each guest is I ask them to recommend another photographer for our listeners to discover and explore, and it can be anyone, and someone you've long admired or someone you've recently discovered. So who would that one photographer be and why?
I'm going to tell you, obviously, we recently did Charlie Cramer on our site, and he's, to me, one of the finest landscape photographers there is. But can he be anywhere in the world?
Anywhere, yeah.
Then I would highly recommend that you think about talking to Joe Cornish.
Okay.
He's a Brit, and I photographed with him in Scotland and Antarctica and a few places. And he's just got an amazing eye. And he's a quiet person. He's certainly not like me, but he's so insightful and he's so inspiring in the way he captures an image and sees things that I learned so much when I was out photographing with him. This was that whole thing where I was saying, you'd be photographing on the hillside together, and I remember coming up to a tidal pool with him, and my legs and my tripod were 5 feet, up there. I wasn't bending down. He ended up taking his tripod 6 inches down, found a tidal pool, set something all up, got the mountains in the background, the sky, and I believe, Jesus, how did he do that?
Yeah.
So there's my man, Joe Cornish.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. And Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. It really was a pleasure to finally have a chance to talk with you, because I've been a long admirer of you and your work there. And you don't disappoint. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And please don't be a stranger now that we've met each other, at least this way. Maybe next time I'm out in California or someplace, we might get a chance to actually go out and take some pictures together.
That would be awesome.
I'd like to count you as my new friend in photography, and hopefully we can do something more. And if I can ever do anything for you, or we can find any way to collaborate together, just drop me a line. I admire what you're doing, and it's great that you've got the same philosophy of sharing things using the medium that you're doing. So congratulations. You've done a great job. Your stuff is really great, and I really thank you for letting me spout off for whatever time frame we've been talking. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks to Kevin for a great conversation. To find out more about him and his work, visit kevinraber.com and luminouslandscape.com. Beginning next month, I'll be teaching a series of workshops where I teach my personal approach to street photography. In a week, I'll be teaching a course here in Los Angeles, and we have one slot left. As well, I'll be in San Francisco in June at StreetFoto SF and New Orleans in October. You'll find links for each of these in the show notes and the Candid Frame website. Sign up today. I look forward to meeting some of you soon. And you can show your support of the Candid Frame by writing a review in the iTunes Store. As people search for podcasts to listen to, these reviews can lead people to us for the very first time, and that makes all the difference. So if you haven't already, please take the time to do it today. You can also support the show by making a monthly contribution through Patreon. And for as little as $2 a month, you can help us to not only meet the cost of production for the show, but allow us to improve our podcast, YouTube channel, and website. Or if you just want to make a one-time contribution to the show, you can do so via PayPal. You'll find links for both on the Candid Frame website or show notes. Thanks to Thomas Nilsson, Guso Desforges, Matthias Fox, and Nick Exposed for their recent contributions. It means a lot. Thank you. To access our complete archive of interviews, download the free Candid Frame app, available for Apple iOS and Android. Not only will you immediately receive the latest episode on your phone or tablet, but now you can easily share your favorite episodes on your social networks and help spread the word. And if you want to drop me a line with comments or suggestions for the show, you can email me directly from the app. Download it today by clicking on the link in the show notes or the website at thecandidframe.com. The Candid Frame's audio engineer is Martin Taylor, who you can find at theothermartintaylor.com. The show's senior producer is Cynthia Parker, and our music is from Kevin MacLeod, whose royalty-free music can be found at incompetech.com. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at simply @Ibarionex. And this is Ibarionex, and this is The Candid Frame.